war did you serve?
I didn't actually serve in any war, but I served during the Vietnam era, and I served just after the Korean era first.
What was your branch of service?
Well, I was in the Army National Guard, the U.S. Army, and the U.S. Navy.
What was your highest rank?
I was E4.
And in what general location did you serve?
When I was in the Army, I served after basic training in the United States. I was shipped to Germany as part of a carrier company that was replacements for the 35th Combat Engineer Battalion in Kitzingen, Germany. And after I was there about 14 months, the unit had been over there for 5 years, and then and the Army had a program then called Operation Gyroscope. And if any unit had been stationed overseas for more than 5 years, they rotated back to the States with another battalion that would come over and take, well, for instance, the 9th Engineers came over from Fort Lewis, Washington to our base, and we went back to Fort Lewis, Washington and stayed, and I was there. I was in Germany 14 months, and then about another 14 months in Fort Lewis. And then I was out for about a year, a little over a year, and a buddy of mine was in the Navy, so I said, well, so I joined the Navy, and I didn't take basic training. I didn't go to basic training because I had prior service. So I went to Brooklyn Navy Yard, waited for orders, and was put on a destroyer escort, which was a reserve training ship, which was really good duty. And we were based, actually, we were home ported right in Providence, Rhode Island. And we would take the reserves out once a month, and I did 1-2 summer cruise with them, and then I had volunteered for submarine school. So I went to submarine school in May of 1960, and went aboard a submarine in August of 1960, and then I stayed on until a little after the first year, and I didn't really like it, so I requested to get off, and I was sent back duty on a destroyer, DB 819, and I was on that for a little over a year. And I had to have my knees operated on, so one knee anyway. So I ended up most of the time about another, not a year, but 10 months or so. I was either in the hospital or on shore duty because I couldn't go back to sea. And I just said, well, I was going to re-enlist, but then I got married.
So you enlisted, you weren't drafted?
No.
And you enlisted both in the National Guard and the Navy?
Well, the story on the National Guard was growing. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Old Saybrook, and the next town over, Westbrook, they had a battery, which was, I say a battery because it was an anti-aircraft artillery, and they had been called up for the Korean War. And when they came back in 1953, or early 50, most of the guys got out because their time was up, so they were really down low on men. And the battery commander happened to be, well, I knew him. We had a business right across, there was an old barn right across the street from where I lived, and him and his father ran a plumbing business, and one day he called me over, we and my buddy, and he said, how would you like to join the National Guard? And I said, geez, he says, he said, no, you're only 16. And I said, yeah, we're all only. So anyway, several of us, my friends, I went down the street and got my buddy, so we were in the National Guard. And we'd meet once a month, once a week. And then we went to summer camp up in Camp Wellfleet, which was in Cape Cod. And then I was in it from about November until August, and that's the following year, and then I joined the regular army.
So you were living in Old Saybrook at the time?
Yeah, yeah.
Why did you join?
Well, back in the 50s, everybody had you had a 6-year obligation, and in other words, and of course the draft was going on. So when I was 18, well, actually I was in the service already when so I didn't have to sign up for the draft. And if you did 2 years active, you had to do 2 years active reserve and then 2 years inactive. So like I say, the draft was going, and a lot of us just about everybody in my class joined something, Marine Corps, Air Force, Coast Guard, you know.
So why did you pick the Army National Guard?
The National Guard, because it was right there, and you knew everybody in it, and it was almost like a Boy Scout meeting. You go there, you drill, and we drill on the guns, and we didn't fire anything because we were in town, but and you got paid, so it gave me some extra money.
So, tell me about your boot camp and training experiences.
Well, boot camp, I went to, for the Army, I went to Fort Dix, and that was the training division then was the 69th Infantry Division, and I went to I went to D Company, which was Dog Company then, and, the 364th Infantry Regiment, and that's where I took my basic infantry. And then I put in to go, I was supposed to have gone to a school, but I didn't get it. They screwed up my orders, so I went to combat engineer training instead, which I really didn't want, which was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And while there, I volunteered to go in the paratroopers with a couple other fellas, and we were supposed to go. You have to take a physical and a PT test, So we both passed that, and we were ready. And then they, excuse me, they called us in one day or a formation and said that you guys are, half the company was going to Germany. So we couldn't get out of going to, we couldn't get out of it. And I ended up going to Germany, which I really didn't want to do, but the Army doesn't really ask you what you want to do.
What year was?
I went in the Army in 1955, August 28th. And I got out in 1958, August. And then I was out until September of 1959, and I joined the Navy. And then, oh yeah, well, I'd been out of the Army about 10 years or so, and I told my wife, I should go back. So I joined there was a military intelligence company in Cromwell, and so I joined it. And being in engineering and draftsman, they made me the battalion draftsman, so I was the draftsman was the 826 military intelligence. And I went, that was 1 day a week, every week, and then I went to one summer camp in Fort Huachuca, Arizona. And while there, I worked with a regular Army unit. So, in fact, they get the commander of the unit, the colonel, I did such a good job for him. He wanted me to come back into the Army. I said, I don't really think my wife would like that.
So can you tell me about your experience at boot camp in Fort Dix?
When I first got there, I was really homesick. I was glad. I wish the hell I had joined. I called my mom. I actually started crying to my mom. She says, I can't do nothing for you. So anyway, after a while, you get kind of, you get used to it, and you get into a routine, and they teach you, basic infantry. First you learn the manual of arms and drill. And of course, I knew a lot of that from being in the Guard anyway. But and then we took, you go to the rifle range, and then 8 weeks. It was 8 weeks, and then we had 10 days leave, and I had to report out to Fort Leonard Wood, and that was another, well, by the time you got out of there, it was probably closer to 3 months, because you usually wait about 2 weeks before training cycles. They don't start right after. And we had one break because it happened over Christmas, so they let us go home for the holidays. And I left there in January, again back to Fort Dix, and then from there we waited for a ship to take us overseas, and then they got us up one morning about 4 o'clock and put us on a bus and took us to Brooklyn, put us aboard ship.
How did you feel about that?
Well, I was sick for the first 3 days at sea. Takes a little while to get your sea legs.
Do you remember what the ship was called?
Was the Actually, it was the MSTS, oh God, I know it above, I know my own name. MSTS, I can't remember.
Do you remember any of your instructors at boot camp?
I remember one at Leonardwood. He was about 5'7". He had a voice like a foghorn. Sergeant Hickman. He came up about to my chin, and he'd get right up in your face and yell at you, you know. But actually turned out to be a pretty good guy. After you're about, you know, only about a week or so left, they lighten up on you.
So after boot camp, you waited for the ship, and then they sent you to...
Sent us to Bremerhaven, Germany. That's where the ship docked. And it was in the wintertime, colder than hell. And they put us on a train. It was an overnight ride down to, because Bremerhaven's up north, and we were in Bavaria, so we had to go south, which is almost, it borders on Austria. So that was an overnight trip on a train, which was, did you ever travel on a Pullman? No? Well, in the United States, the Pullmans, the beds run parallel with the car. Well, in Germany, they don't. They're crossed. So every time the thing breaks, you think you're going to fall out because, you know, you spend half your time trying to stay in the rack.
What were your first impressions when you got there?
Germany? Well, when they picked us up at the station, or the Bahnhof, as it's called, they took us, and 2.5-ton truck, Army trucks picked us up. And to tell you the truth, I never really liked it. You know, the younger kids were, kids that were my age or a little old. They were friendly, but some of the old timers, they hold grudges. You know, and one thing that really stood out to me was when you'd hit a lot of these towns or cities or whatever, and you'd still see all kinds of bomb damage. Buildings. In fact, some of our guys, they asked us to, in a town near us, in Würzburg, which was the closest, biggest town, and it really took heavy bombing during the war. And what you'd see just 4 walls. There would be nothing else. And by that time, of course, trees had been growing up, and so they were knocking them down. And every day, they still, you'd hear the whistle blow, and you'd have to get out of the area because they found an unexploded bomb. So they'd have to call an ordnance company. And because the bombs had been there for so long, they wouldn't try to defuse them because of, rust and that. So they would haul them away, and they'd explode them on the field or something somewhere. So there was a lot of that.
What was your assignment in Germany?
I was, when I first went there, I was in a line company, and I was called what they call pioneers. And you do basic engineering work. We had to, we were trained in minefields, explosives, and defusing mines. And I was also the machine gunner for my platoon, which gave me extra stuff to do. And then I was in it about 6 or 7 months, and I got transferred to headquarters company, which was better because we didn't have to pull guard duty when we were in headquarters. So I was with what they called the logistics section. And basically I drove the truck for them. That's about what it was.
So then after you were in Germany, then where did you go?
I didn't really think I'd come back because the guys had been there longer than me. And I guess because I was in the headquarters, that's what got me back. And we came back, and again we docked in Brooklyn. As soon as we got off the ship, they had buses waiting for us. We had 30 days leave and 12 days travel time to get to Fort Lewis. So we went, guys that were going, coming up to New England, we all were in Grand Central. We got a bottle and was passing around on the train. And I always remember I had a buddy of mine Tommy Healy was his name, from Boston. I used to pull duty for him because I always liked to drive the Jeep. And he always wanted to go into town and drink. So I said, he was Irishman, you know. So we came up on the train together, and we got off in Old Saybrook. Now, Tom was from Boston. So he gets off, and of course, you know, there's nothing there, you know, the radio station. And so Tom says to me, well, where the hell's the town? And I said, well, it's about a half a mile down the road. He says, oh, Christ, get back on the train. I'll take you to Boston. We'll have a good time.
It was Irish Boston.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So remind me again, what month and year was this that you returned back to work?
Came back in May, the end of April, 1957. Because I got out about 14 months later.
So what did you do in between April 57 and August 58 while you were still enlisted?
While at Fort Lewis,
You were at Fort Lewis for the remainder of the time?
yeah, from 57 to 58. From April of 57 to the end of, till August 27th, 1958. I got discharged out there. Or released. You don't get discharged until you finish. You don't get your discharge. You get your DD Form 214, but you didn't get your discharge until you did the 6 years lapsed. You know, then they mail it to you. And actually, well, I had a girlfriend out there by then, and I had a car, and I stayed for a while, and then I came back home, which was a mistake because I turned around going back out there, and it cost money, and I worked. Excuse me, one place I worked at Boeing Aircraft for a while, just a picky uni job, but it was like 30 miles away, and I was working the graveyard shift, which I didn't like it because I never get used to it. You know, by the time you're ready to go to bed, you have to go to work. And then I worked. Me and this buddy of mine, we worked that. There was 3 of us that shared a house. And Don, the oldest guy, he was older. He was a college graduate. He went to the University of New Hampshire. He was a pretty sharp guy. And Bill, he was from Boston, another Irishman. And we worked for a while at this. They had a big, General Mills had a big grain silos and that there. So we worked there, bull work, really, unloading freight cars, 100-pound sacks of flour and stuff like that. But the money was good for the time. So.
That was a typical day at Fort Lewis for you?
What was it? Well, just about, well, I was in the motor. Well, I was at the headquarters for a while, and I got transferred back to C Company after, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. And again, I was put back in the motor pool, and I drove for one of the trucks for a platoon. And then, if I wasn't out on, you know, they gave us, we'd have to haul gravel and stuff like that. If I wasn't doing that, I'd be down pulling maintenance on the truck, goofing off mostly. Yeah, it's just, once you get into what they call a TO&E outfit, and you know your sergeants and that, you know, it's like, you know, it's just, you know, you just tell them where you're going. They ask you what you're going to do, and if they want you to do something, they'll tell you to do it. And it was like, you know, you knew everybody, and some of them I had stationed. Some of them I've been with them ever since I went to Germany, so, you know, we knew each other pretty well.
Was there any casualties in your unit?
Not that I recall, no. There were casualties when we were on maneuvers. You know, you hear guys. I remember we was out there one time and a guy got run over by a tank. And yeah, that's another time a short round came in and killed some guys. And some guys got wrapped up in car accidents, motorcycle accidents, stuff like that. But I don't remember anybody actually getting, you know, other than no maneuver, anybody dying. But no, it's.
So did you see any combat while you were in
No,
Europe?
there was no war. In Germany, we spent a lot of time in the field because Well, it's what we call it. I think they even gave a ribbon for it now. They're considered cold warriors, and of course our job was to would be the Russians, or the Warsaw Pact. That's who we trained to fight against. And so we had to learn all of their, what they look like, what their uniforms look like, what their vehicles look like. And if we saw them, we had to report it. And they always told us, we were probably outmanned 3 or 4 to 1 if the balloon went up. And actually our job was, we always kept a couple of vehicles back when we went on maneuvers, because if something started, they were, the dependents, the guys' wives and that, they would truck them. What the plan was, they would pick up the dependents. The dependents can only take one luggage. They'd truck them to France, and then they'd go from France over to England. Of course, that never happened. And we were just, the military that was there then was just to fight a delaying action, because we couldn't, we were outgunned and out-tanked. And what our job was to fall back and to hold the line until we could get reinforcements over from the States. So that's basically what the training we went through, just no, go ahead.
How are you trained to identify and,
Well, we had the barracks that we stayed in, that we lived in. They were beautiful because during the war, the bases are small over there. I mean, it's not like Fort Lewis was crazy. It's like probably 100 miles square, 200 miles square. And over there, you could walk around it in an hour, because during World War II, it was an air base, the Luftwaffe, and they flew some of the first jet fighters out of there. And what they did was, there was a big forest, woods, And I remember the first time we were out there on maneuvers, and I see all these big holes with water in them. I'm saying to the sergeant, he says, well, those are bomb craters. Because they would bomb the airfield and strafe the airfield, but they left the town alone until that one time. And what the Germans did, they're pretty clever. They put taxiways out into the woods, and then they made these huge camouflage nets that came down so they couldn't be seen from the air. So it was an air base during the war. And I was going to say, the barracks were, they had all marble in them, and actually, for some reason, they never bombed the barracks, because most of them were officers. 2 or 3 men to a room, or I had 2 men to a room. The biggest I think were like 6 men to a room. And anyway, so of course the ceilings were high in this. So probably you had marble about this high up, and then they had huge, about the size of these things, of all their equipment. And they had, God, I don't know how they even kept track of it themselves. The uniforms, they had about 90 different colors. I'm saying, how the hell would you know? I always remember, and they questioned us on it. The vehicles were pretty easy to spot. Tank's a tank. And but anyway, and we, and like I say, we probably once a week we'd have to go through it and see if we remembered what they taught us the last time. So it was good, but actually I only went into town, well, my buddy and I, we'd go up to Würzburg once in a while, but I'll bet you for 6 months I never left the base, because I never really, now I wish that when I got into more looking at antiques and that, like say Hummels and that, you could buy them for like nothing, because you got almost $5 for $1, and you could buy a lot with that. See, you weren't supposed to take, when you got paid, we didn't get paid in greenbacks. We got paid in what they call military payment script. And it looked like, we used to call it monopoly money, because that's just what it looked like. The only coin we had was a penny. You had one bill was 5 cents, another bill was 10 cents, 25 cents, 50 cents. It was $1, $5, $10, and 20. 20 was the biggest denomination. And they were all different colors. And you'd have a wad that big, it'd be maybe have $2.50, you know, because it was, everything was paper. And so when you went through the pay line, they pay in a script, and then if you wanted to go into town, you bought marks. And if you didn't, but what most of the guys did, and what I did myself, we'd sell it on the black market because you got more for it. You get maybe 7 or 8 marks for $1. But you could get in trouble doing it because they said, oh, it goes over to East. I said, well, who cares? But if you went downtown with a greenback, Germans would take it, you know, or even on base. And we were rationed for some things. I think we could buy, of course, everybody smoked in those days. You got 4 cartons of cigarettes for a month. You could get 4 cartons a month. And most of them, I used to sell them to the Germans. And you got, and if you had a car, I think you got 50 gallons a month. And some guys would buy these cars, but they were junks. They didn't run, but they had the thing for them, so they would give them, so they'd maybe get, say, 100 or 150 gallons. Well, the Germans, they'd sell the gas to the Germans because they always wanted the gas, you know. And because you'd be stopped in traffic, and there was a lot of motorbikes and motorcycles. And we always carried the gas can alongside the, you know, on the truck for gas. And you'd be sitting up high, and you'd hear somebody banging on your door, and there'd be somebody on a motor scooter, and you'd be pointing at the gas. They'd want to buy the gas. Well, it was fine, but a lot of times the CID, which was, you know, plainclothes cops, really, they'd try to sting you with something like that, because you could go to the stockade for that. You know, they court-martial you for that. But guys did it. I know there was one guy in another outfit, he drove a tank truck. And when you go out to the field, you'd refuel from the tank, you'd go with your 5-gallon cans, and you'd refuel off the tank truck. You'd have to, you know. And then that guy would go back and refill. Well, that worked fine. He went back and refilled it, but when he came back, the tank truck was empty. And he said, oh, geez, I must have left the spigot open. But what he done, he sold the whole tank truck to the Germans. Yeah, pretty much. I only saw one guy that was a real pain in the ass, and like they say, the young kids, they could speak English as good as I could. And I talked to guys that fought in the war. It was funny because I never talked to anyone that fought the Americans. They all fought the Russians. And I said to them, well, I don't know what the hell we were doing over there. But of course, a lot of them did, but they just didn't want to tell you that they did, you know. And there was a barber that we had in the A Company. The barracks were kind of L-shaped, and we had 2 companies, A Company and C Company, and then we had headquarters company was right next door, and then we had another company that was like 30 miles away, B Company, up in Bamberg. But I got to be kind of friendly with this guy. And he was a pilot during the war, flew a Messerschmitt, so he, you know. And this guy said, I know. He said, oh yeah, I sat down American planes, British planes. I said, well, that was wartime. You didn't shoot them down, they shoot you down, you know. But most of the kids were good, and they liked they liked westerns, you know, movies. Oh, Jesus, they knew all of the stars, and for the most part, yeah, they were friendly. We had this old fella, Pop, we used to call him. He was the tailor, you know, and every company had a tailor. They had their own barber, and so it was, you know, it was good. You know, and Pop had fought in First World War, I think, because he was blind in one eye. They said that's why he didn't go in the Second World War. Well, no, he wasn't a barber; he was a tailor. But and then that younger guy, Lenny, that was like an apprentice to him. And they got to know you. You know, they know your name. You know, maybe not your first name, but they know your last name. And yeah, he was a nice guy. And some guys would, and he'd let the guys needed something pressed real quick for guard duty. He'd always, you know, press it for him. Or sometimes he even let the guys do it if he was busy. He'd press it. They used those big cast iron irons. The things probably weighed 10 pounds. I mean, if they could put a crease on it, you cut your finger on it. And they would, when he put that down, he put a damp cloth on it. Well, you'd get a crease there. But yeah, it was good. And I was a pretty good soldier. I used to make colonel's orderly. When you stood guard mount, and then, you know, the officer Day would come up to you and you'd have to come to present arms and he'd take your weapon, he'd ask you one of your general orders or something like that. And I was always pretty sharp, so a lot of times I made colonel's orderly, which meant that the next day, you got off of guard duty that time, and the next day you went to the headquarters and you rode with the colonel in the car. You opened the door for him, you know, stuff like that. So, you know, I like the spit and polish part of it. I almost got to go to, and I forget what happened. The old guard, you know, the old guard is the National Honor Guard. They call it the old guard in Washington, D.C. And for the unknown soldier, well, it's not really, it's the unknown, because, you know, they call it the unknown soldier from the First World War, but it actually could have been a Marine, you know, because during the, not to get off on a track here, but during the Marine, they had a 5th Marine Regiment that was attached to the 2nd United States Army Division, the old Arrowhead Division. And anyway, they didn't have uniforms for Marines. You know, the Marines had their own uniform, but they didn't have replacements for them. So they had to wear Army uniforms, which pissed off a lot of the Marines. So what they would do a lot of times is they take the buttons off their old uniform, sew it on, you know. But so that's what I'm saying. That's what I say. It could have very well been a Marine, because they